Alrighty, so I think we've got sound, at least on my end we do, so we'll figure out here in a little bit if we hear Brian or not. But we are back, like we promised we would be. I could definitely hear Brian banging on the keyboard. So we are back like we promised we would be. Post, I don't know what you would call those first three games, out of conference, I guess.
Yep, non-conference.
Non-conference schedule. So we're back. We're going to talk about that, the teams that got through that successfully, teams that didn't. I think we're going to hit on the conference schedule and kind of go from there. We had a whole itinerary. I lost it. Brian has it. So
it's in our chat. It's literally in Slack's chat.
So
it's not lost. It's there.
Without further ado, I'll introduce myself again. I am Lewis of the Ohio State Buckeyes, and I am 2-1. Which I don't even want to talk about because my 1 is a loss to Brian, and my 2 is probably the most helpful factor in Brian, owner of coach, owner, whatever you want to call him, of Houston. Who is, if you haven't figured out, yes, the rankings on the bottom of the screen that are ticking along there are accurate, and Houston is the first team listed there. It's not a typo. I was just shocked as anybody else. But, yeah, how are you doing, Brian?
I'm doing great. This has been the greatest week of my life. Number 1 for week 3. That's what I always dreamed of for this league. So, I think we are just going to kind of give an update of this year, talk about things, especially since we're at this important junction as we move away from non-conference into conference play, and kind of talk about the value and importance of it, because some people might not realize the importance of non-conference games in the whole grand scheme of things, especially how it plays out for postseason play. So we'll get into that stuff and kind of talk about where each conference has fallen so far after 3 weeks.
Yeah, sounds good to me. I don't know where you want to start, so
let's start with just a quick rundown of how the rankings work. We will review how conference play and division winners are decided, just to kind of give some context as we move into the next 8 weeks? Yeah. 8 weeks that we have left of the regular season, and hopefully kind of frame the picture of, because we've had a bunch of people talk about in chat, they've not been happy with their rankings, and there's a lot of variation in the beginning. I've said it, I think, multiple times. The rankings in the beginning of the season are very volatile. From week to week, there's going to be huge levels of movement. I think this week we even saw teams jumping up 25, 27 spots. And a lot of that has to do with how we try to put an objective score together. We could do this subjectively, but I think that leaves us to really have a lot of people have a case for being more and more upset. So we try to leave it objectively, and we look at 2 things primarily. One is your opponent's win totals for the teams that you beat, which we call power points, just to kind of give it a phrase or a term, just to make it more digestible. But power points are essentially your opponent's win totals as they accrue through the season, act as like this base denominator for the rankings. And then we multiply those scores by your all-play win percentage. So, for example, we'll use me just because it seems very pertinent, and Lewis is a great example as to how my score got to where it is. So I'm 3-0 at this point. I had beaten Lewis, who's got 2 wins as of right now, Clemson, who's got 1 win, and Alabama, who has 2 wins. So them together, and they gave me 5 power points at the moment. So those 5 power points multiplied by my, I think it's like 80%, no, just under 80%, 76% win percentage ends up giving me my 3.843 score. And that score is what you're ranked on each week. So as the season goes along, the scores keep accruing, and we keep constantly ranking people. And the beginning here, a lot of it, the first 2 weeks, a lot of it was just based on your all play percentage. So essentially who was scoring the most points was getting higher ranked. It's starting to shift a little more, and depending on who you've played, who you've beaten, and how many wins they have, it's starting to stratify the field a little bit, to making a little more of adjustments. So we're seeing some teams who are above teams who have better records than them right now, just because they've beaten teams who theoretically have a stronger case of being a better team because they've won more. So that's kind of how the rankings break down, just to give a basic understanding of it. This is also why we try to put a lot of importance on non-conference scheduling and during the off season, because we feel that giving you guys the ability to schedule your games, this type of criteria allows us to reward people that give or schedule harder games. Anyone, if we were to just base it off of the wins that you got and the all play that you got, they could schedule their own games, play a bunch of cupcake teams, and have a leg up over those who play tougher opponents. This one kind of gives those quality wins a little more of a heavier weight. So if you beat a really good team, it's going to help your rankings up. I know some people have talked about, well, I have a quality loss. We don't factor in quality losses so much besides having the buffer of your all play. Lewis is laughing because he's mentioned that before. But the all play is kind of the buffer. So if you're a good team and you just keep losing, the all play kind of holds your score up because it looks at the points that you're scoring across the league and judging it based off of that. So if you consistently are scoring 70, 80 points, your all play is going to be pretty high, and it's going to kind of buffer you if you lose those tougher games. So that's kind of how the rationale is broken down in terms of the ranking. Do you have any input on that, Lewis?
Yeah, no, I definitely was laughing because, like you said, I'm 2-1, and I now have my one loss being the number one team in all of NCFF. So that was kind of – I haven't figured out a fix of how you would calculate significant losses, I guess you would call them, because I do feel that there is a difference between losing to the number one team in the NCFF as opposed to losing to UAB. But there are I mean, it's a good – I think it's been that way for as long as I can remember. I think it was that way. Not much change has gone into that. I could be wrong. I don't think much, if at all, has gone into that in – it would be 5 years, 6 years, something like that, however long it's been since I was last in there. But yeah, no, I 100% agree, and I think you brought up a good point that I think I was just looking. The biggest movement was someone jumped up 29 spots into the top 25 this week. I think that was USC, who hasn't had a quarterback and won't have a quarterback for the next couple of weeks. So that'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. But then I think our biggest faller, I didn't double check teams that weren't in the top 25, but the biggest faller obviously is Baylor, who went from 1 to, I think, right outside the top 25, I think 26 or 27, something like that. Then again, it was for exactly what you hit on. So without looking to see who they played, I want to say it was a cupcake week 1, a cupcake week 2, and then a pretty bad week 3 loss.
So that they played one bad team, I'm pretty sure, and beat them. So they played Virginia, who you beat, and then they also played UCF, who at this point they're actually ranked higher than them, and they're the only under 500 team that's in the top 25. They're literally 25, and it's probably because they beat a 2-win team and their all play is higher. The other big thing that happened with Baylor this week and why they dropped so severely was that they had 2 really good scoring weeks. I think they had a really high all play for first 2, but then they laid an absolute dud last week where they were one of the bottom points. And so that drop from their all play hurt them pretty badly. And so it's them not they beat a good team in UCF, I think, for just the standpoint of how many points UCF has, but they just don't have the wins accrued at this point like some other teams do, like USC, who beat Wisconsin, who's got 2 wins. That's already a buffer for them. So they would have 3 power points, which already puts them ahead of Baylor. So it's just it's just some formality stuff. And like I've echoed in the chat, the goal is not to have week 3 rankings correct. The goal is to have week 12 rankings correct and have cases for the good teams to be ranked high at those points, because they ultimately decide who ends up making it into the playoffs. And it becomes a highly contentious thing because there are 86 teams and you are fighting for 3 playoff spots for at-large bids. That's really what the rankings provide. The other big thing is that they will have now an importance in terms of how we schedule bowl games. So depending on where you're ranked at the end of week 12 will determine who you're going to play in your bowl games. That's different from last year and previous years. So we're doing that now because it also has some elements of affecting the payouts, because we've now changed up the payout system for this year to give pretty much anyone who's ranked at the end of the season some payout. So those types of changes have some effects and they're important now. But like I said, the goal is not to have this set. And I can see why people are upset, because they look at college football and they see good teams not really falling down all the way out of rankings. But we're trying to be objective here, and that's just how the calculation
That's
works.
points for that quality loss. That's what that is.
Yeah,
that's that quality loss that I'm trying to figure out how to work into a form somehow. But yeah, no. I think the big takeaway there is that there's not, and I have to be like, I don't know. I try to be like nice in how I word things because I don't want to assume anything. But there just needs to be, I think, more awareness to the scheduling, of itself. So like when we come around to do that scheduling, there are some people that are like ghost town. You don't hear from them. They let that go to randomness, which it's too important to let it go to be up to a random number generator to figure out your matchups. There are some that don't really care. And you and I have talked about this. If you think you're a good team or going to have a good year, or I mean, I guess would be that goodness would be the top 30 or 40 teams. If you think you're one of those top 30 or 40 teams, then you need to be scheduling teams that are in the top 25, 30, whatever. Yeah, you need to have those quality games. If your team's bad, then play bad teams and collect wins, because that's how you do it. You're not going to get any points from UAB playing Houston week 4, where UAB is going to get steamrolled. That doesn't help anybody. UAB might get better off from playing UVA, who I have on there, and we hit on that. It's not really, it's a win, but it's not going to count for much. And it's, again, one of those things. I think my team's outperformed. I mean, I thought it'd be solid, but it's probably outperformed a little bit. Outside of near lineup decisions week 1, I'd be 3-0 with a whole hell of a lot better. It would essentially be the same situation flopped. I would have as many points. I would have as many points off of you as you now currently have off of me. But yeah, no, I just think maybe a little bit more awareness, and if there aren't people that are aware, then maybe we need to shed some light on that, the strategy there that's involved in those first 3 weeks, but or even the 4th week. But I think that it's an underappreciated aspect of the league.
Absolutely. I totally feel like it's an underlying strategic thing that can end up paying huge dividends for you. I don't think enough people think about it, especially when they want to just schedule a rivalry game, which is great if you want to schedule it with your buddies. That I have no qualms against that. But there is a direct outcome with being strategic. So if you are a bad team and you schedule games against good teams, you're not only hurting yourself in terms of being potentially competitive, even though you're probably not, you're also hurting that good team because you're likely not going to get a lot of wins in the year. Bad teams should definitely be playing bad teams at the beginning of the season, because if you can go 3-0 and you're a bad team, you just need 3 more wins to get a bowl game. I mean, if that's the aspiration for the year, that's exactly the direct way you should be looking at your season in April when we open up scheduling. That should be how it goes. Right. If you are a good team, you probably want to not, like Frank's a great example. Frank played just a hell of a non-conference schedule. He played Oklahoma State. He played
Vanderbilt.
No, he's got them this week. He played some other teams. He played Georgia Tech, and he also played, I think it was someone else that was really good.
I'll pull it
I
up.
forget who it is.
Give me 2 seconds. It's right here. Oklahoma State, Georgia Tech, and Purdue.
Oh, yeah. All three really great teams. 2 of them are ranked currently in the top 10. So both are 7 and 8. And Oklahoma State last week was ranked 12th, and because they lost this week they dropped out. But the point of the matter is that Frank put a nightmarish non-conference schedule. He probably would have been better off playing maybe 1 or 2 teams that aren't top of the line contenders from like preseason, and looking to schedule maybe a more middling team just to kind of not have this boomer bust profile for non-conference, because it can end up putting you on the lurch where if he went 0-3, he would have no points and he'd be literally probably needing to win his conference in order to get into the playoffs. I mean, that just puts the margin that much more of a razor thin margin. And it doesn't mean everything's going to work out. I think I played 2. I got really lucky the last 2 weeks.
Yeah,
The game against Alabama, I got super lucky. I was sitting in my hotel room watching the Browns game, and I was like freaking out when I saw Nick Chubb run backwards and like near the end of the fourth quarter. I'm like, oh my God, that just cost me the game, because it was within less than, I think, 0.04 points of beating Bama. And then Clemson, I got lucky because probably Barkley going down. So I'm not gonna be upset about those things, but I could easily be 0-3. And then of course Lewis just not putting the right people in the lineup.
I had the right people in the lineup. I had Derrick Henry in, and I suck. I absolutely suck, and I'll admit this, and I have admitted this. Week 1, I suck everywhere. I find a lot of guys that I like, and then when it comes time to start them, and I'm like, I can't start them. It's guys that I'm like, all right, I have a lot of DJ Shark. I have a lot of some of the similar rookies we've talked about. All these guys that I'm like, okay, these are my offseason buys, and then week 1, when it comes time to like put your money where your mouth is, I just hate to pull the trigger on it, and I tinker it. And I think I told you, I said this is the last time. Not that I listened to Matthew Berry or anything, but I watched whatever I was watching in the morning. Then I watched it, and they said, hey, this Cleveland defense is physical. They're going to be good, yada, yada. Derrick Henry not going to have a good game. I subbed Derrick Henry out at it's timestamped somewhere on my phone. I can go look. But I sub him out right before kickoff, put in Philip Lindsay, and that cost me what would have been a massive upset, I think, week 1.
Probably would have been.
But no, I think that's how everybody should schedule it in my eyes, is I went into it going, I need to come out of that non-conference schedule with 2 wins, for the same reason that you kind of said here. If you schedule, it's great, and I know Frank kind of goes by the mantra of, oh, you schedule the best if you beat the best, and you're going to be the best because the numbers are going to be there. Well, if you have a really, really good team, which Frank does, and you do come out 0-3 because you have a bad week or injuries or the Tyreek thing is killed a lot of these teams that we had preseason up top.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you have that kind of change within those first couple of weeks, or bad luck, whatever you want to call it, you come out 0-3, that's free points that you're going to miss out on. And so, my strategy was an easy win, which was UVA, something more on my level, which was Oklahoma, and then try to take a shot at somebody, which was Houston. But I was playing you whether you sucked or were good or middle of the pack or whatever, so that was happening. But that was going into it. So 2-1, I'm thrilled. At 3-0, you should be thrilled because you really should be 0-3.
My team has played well. It's not like I've laid duds and I've gotten really lucky. I think sometimes the best way to win is when you have a really ugly week and you just, squeak it out with like a 50 to 55 game. Those are sometimes the best wins, because then your team can pick it up next week. But I digress. We'll move quickly and run through, now that we're into conference play, kind of the breakdown of how we rank or determine the conference or division winners. For those who aren't aware, we play through week 12 of the regular season. Week 13 is reserved for conference championship teams. So each division winner from every conference, so like ACC's is Coastal versus Atlantic, and then et cetera, for all the other conferences. They match up and play each other for week 13. So to determine who represents each division really breaks down to who has the best conference record. If there is someone tied, 2 teams are tied, they will go to be decided by a head-to-head. So you will play everyone in your division. There's no one that's going to skip, so that will always be an applicable factor. If there are 3 or more teams tied, it goes based on a head-to-head record as well, comparing all the schools. Then it will be a divisional win percentage that will be compared, so your win-loss for all the teams that you played in your division, not just conference. Then they'll look at the total number of points scored in games against conference opponents will be compared. And during any of these processes, if there's a tiebreaker for them, so let's say three teams in Big Ten East are tied at the end of week 12, Indiana, Maryland, and Ohio State. They have all the same record, and they had the same head-to-head, but let's say Maryland and Ohio State have the better division but are still tied. They would carry on through the total points scored in games versus conference opponents. And if they're still tied, it would get the total number of points scored in games against division opponents, and then it will be based on the national ranking. And if they are somehow tied,
there's no way.
Yeah. The representative will be chosen by a coin flip. So just a breakdown of that. Most of the time, it's just head-to-head that decides it. I think last year we had maybe one division that had a 3-way tie, and I think the head-to-head records broke out correctly. We will give kind of a breakdown of, as we get closer in weeks 11 and 12 prior to the games, who has clinching scenarios, who doesn't, just to kind of give some extra drama to it. So that's kind of how the division breaks down.
Yeah, I will say this, though. If there is anybody's luck that's bad enough to have something come down to a coin flip, it probably is going to be me. So I would imagine that even though I said that there's no way that it's possible, I'm sure that there is somehow I will lose on a coin flip at some point. That's how I got my original team here. When I joined an expansion, there were, I don't know how many teams. It was ridiculous. There's like 20-some people, I think. It was the first original, like, very big expansion. I was part of that. And there was one orphan, which I'm not going to get into because I'm still not really thrilled how that shook out. But it had to do something. We did some nonsense with the lottery and pooling of lottery numbers, like the Powerball number, whatever that number, like whatever it was. I got that freaking number. So that's my luck. So I will probably most likely lose on a coin flip at some point in this league, I would imagine.
But yeah, because I have the commissioner discount, but you have added weight, added unfavoredness because you're the commissioner's rival, and that's how that works out. So it's like the inverse of commissioner discount. All right. So with all that said, let's do a review breakdown of conferences. We won't spend too much time on the divisions. We will just look at it as a conference as a whole. We're going to talk about surprises, disappointments. Ross did run a crystal ball projection with a third-party website, and we'll just kind of give an update of where those teams stand based on that. And then Lewis and I will give our own predictions of who we think will be the winners. So let's start with the ACC first. Lewis, any surprising teams for the ACC for you?
I just as a whole, like, the ACC was one. So when I would assume you posted polls in all the conference chats, because I got one in the Big Ten. So I was a little disappointed. My Big Ten is asleep at the wheel apparently, so not too many people responded. But the ACC was one that I hit on when you posted. I was like, I want to be in there because I just want to hear what's going on, because the ACC has a lot of really good teams, but there's only 3 of them that are ranked. But the ones that are ranked are all very high. I think all 3 of them might be top 10. I can't remember.
Yeah, pretty close. North Carolina's just outside.
Yeah, but they're all very, very good. And then I think Clemson's going to be ranked. I can't remember. I think Florida State I thought was going to be good at the beginning of the season. We also had Miami up there at the beginning of the season, so I think they're going to start to climb. So there's like 1, 2, 3, there's 6 or 7 teams in this ACC that are very, very, very good teams, and so I was just kind of excited to kind of hear the discussion, and of course I don't like to see any of that, so kind of hear the discussion of if there was any that goes on in the ACC, because I think there are a lot of strong teams. Louisville was one that I talked about. I sent out week 1 stats. I didn't do anything for week 3 yet, but I sent out post week 1 stats about I mean, most of it was coulda, woulda, shoulda stuff, but had Louisville set a right lineup, had they had this, like they would have put up. It was a ridiculous amount of points. I think it was like 160 points or something. And then when I looked at it week 2, it was the same kind of deal. So Louisville is a very solid team. So somebody that I just don't think that we talked about them preseason when we were hitting on some of these other teams. I think we focused more on Miami, Georgia Tech, definitely Clemson, and so the teams that kind of came up out of nowhere. Louisville, I think, did very well, and I think Virginia Tech might have been the team. You correct me, but I think Virginia Tech was the one that was replaced with a new owner last second.
Yep.
So, and I think we made comments like, "Good Lord, this team's got a long way to go." He's sitting here at 2-1. Looking at points scored, it's not terrible, it's not great, but it's managed. Made the most of probably not the best situation there.
Yeah. I think points scored is a good barometer. I think all play is a good barometer right now for strength of teams. I do think so. I will give just a quick rundown of the polls. We had, I think, 7 vote for in the Atlantic and 5 vote in the coastal polls. And what they broke down was 4 people, or the most people, Florida State's going to represent the Atlantic Conference, and then there was a tie between Georgia Tech and North Carolina in the Coastal. And so I totally agree. I think there's probably already more stratified teams. I think Clemson's had a tough non-conference, schedule. I think Miami's also had a really tough non-conference schedule. They put up a bunch of points last week, and they played Georgia, and they just lost by I think a point. So they've played 2 really good teams in Wisconsin and Georgia, and they have come out with 1 and 2 and scored a bunch of points. I think they even have a pretty decent all play. So yeah, they're hovering around 70% all play, and they've scored a ton of points. So I think the big surprise is Virginia Tech being 2-1. I think they've done a really great job. I also think a big surprise is how disappointing, or not a surprise, but I think a disappointing team for me has been Florida State, just because they haven't put up a lot of points so far this season.
Yeah, I don't know who they have. I mean, I think the points are going to come. Looking at what's going on here, I don't know who these teams start because I don't dig into enough of this. But just looking at what he has on this roster, I would imagine he's starting Mahomes every week, being 2 really good quarterbacks. Zeke is kind of put together a couple of weeks where, the first week he got a touchdown, then it was a touchdown and moderate yards. This past week was a lot of yards, there were touchdowns. So Zeke really hasn't broken out yet. He's got another 1 or 2 really solid choices at running back there. The issue is just these wide receivers. I think he's starting Terry McLaurin, or at least should consider it if he's not. But I think it's a team that's easily going to turn around. Calvin Ridley, and it's not even his fault. I think Atlanta just looks terrible. So I think he's going to kind of rebound here as teams start to settle down, because there's still, you got to remember, there's still some parity within the NFL. Some of these teams, we still aren't sure if some of these teams are good or what they're going to be, or any of that nonsense. So once that stuff settles down, I think a team like Florida State will have a better go at things.
All right. So looking at the crystal ball projections, it has Louisville getting 6 more wins this year, Clemson getting 5 more, Wake Forest getting 4, Florida State getting 4, NC State getting 4, Boston College and Syracuse. Boston College getting 3, Syracuse getting 2, Coastal, Georgia Tech getting 6, North Carolina getting 6, Miami getting 5 more wins, Virginia Tech getting 4 more wins, Pitt getting 3, Duke getting 3, and Virginia getting 2. Now, these crystal balls are really more heavily based in, I think, all play than anything else in terms of how they're deciding these win totals. And I don't know if the text takes bye weeks into account. So something to take with a grain of salt, just some added third-party kind of valuations to it. But based on this, it would look like Georgia Tech, North Carolina would end up playing against Louisville in the conference championships. How about you, Lewis? Who do you think is going to walk out of this conference?
I don't know. I want to look more into this crystal ball stuff. So if he has it or you have that, send me that, because I also have somebody that can code this to write it out to where they can break it down to almost like you're starting. What do we have, 6 or 7 here? However many people we start, they would rank all 86 starting lineups, rank all benches, rank all overall, and then project wins and stuff off of that. So I'll see if he can put something together. But anyways, out of this, dude, I think Georgia Tech out of Coastal is probably a lock. They were, on paper, the best team in that. For me, at least, I think they should be. I think I had them very high. I can't remember. That I really sounded like Donald Trump there for a hot second. It was really weird. Really high, really good, really like that's sorry. But I like them. I think Louisville is a solid team. I think that was the team you had up there with the most projected wins. I still think Clemson is really, really, really good. The only issue, and it actually isn't even an issue because he has Cook and Kamara. Barkley's out. I was going to say it depends on how long he's out. I still think Clemson is really, really good. And again, he was an injury away from most I think you still would have beaten him, but just again, you never know with Barkley. So I think he could have been 2-1, which would put him right in kind of this pack here. So I would say Clemson, Georgia Tech would be your ACC final.
I think so. I think the Barkley injuries for Clemson. Barkley is just going to be this common thing. It depends on how long he's out for a lot of this stuff, because it's really hard to replace someone like him. Because some of these teams, Clemson would have to dig into Aaron Jones. Well, he's got Dalvin Cook and Alvin Kamara.
Which is, I think he'll be all right.
Yeah, so he should be just fine. I'm a little more worried about North Carolina without Barkley. I think he's less secure in his running back depth. Yeah, he's got Peyton Barber, Matt Breida, Jordan Howard, and Aaron Jones. So really it's Aaron Jones and maybe Matt Breida that you can rely on. And I don't think his wide receivers are as good as Georgia Tech. So I really feel like Georgia Tech or Miami seems to be my two that I would probably go with out of Coastal. And I probably am still going to lean on Clemson because I think they're better wide receivers. And
for the same reason, I just put up Louisville because they were one that I was like, hey, they've done really well. The stats like them. I said that week 1, the stats liked them. They liked them week 2. And then your crystal ball, I think, picked them to win the most remaining games with what they have. I think that means it's putting Louisville in the finals there. But just pulling up Louisville's roster, it looks a lot like mine. No offense to, it's not a dig, but it's not also the best thing in the world. Because you've got guys like Austin Eckler. We just heard the Melvin Gordon news, so Gordon's probably not there this week, but it's probably back next week, so that's going to change a lot of these teams. And then just looking at, he's got the DJ Shark, which I've been thrilled with, but again, is that sustainable? So far it has been, but then you start looking at these other guys, Demarcus Robinson, John Ross, all guys that I think that he has been starting. And so we've kind of seen that John Ross did really well week 1, pretty good week 2, and then finally week 3 it was a comeback to earth moment. So it kind of depends on some of these guys if these sustain. If they sustain, then there's a chance. But my money would be on a lineup like Clemson where you've got Cook and Kamara and some of those other bigger names.
Yeah, Clemson only really has to. I think the big worry besides Barkley being out is he doesn't have a backup quarterback like some of these other teams do. He's got Taysom Hill and Nate Sudfeld as his current active roster teams. He also has Dwayne Haskins, but I currently don't think he's going to probably want to play him for 1 week. But you never know. So I think even Florida State has a better QB situation. He's got Watson and Mahomes. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays anything into it. But I think there's not going to be too many surprises. I think currently, those teams seem to be setting themselves up, those 6, as like the competitors. Everyone else seems to be well below them.
Yeah.
All right. So next is Big 12. Big 12. Let's see here. I think they had done the best as a collective conference in the win-loss records out of.
They had to. A lot of these are just 1, 2, 3 3-0s, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 2-1s, and 3 1-2s. And the 1 and 2 teams aren't even that bad. I mean, you're looking, they're scoring low 200s, which is, again, if you bump that up, you're talking that's a 1, 2, 3, 4th place team in the ACC. So, yeah, really, really good production out of the Big 12 early.
All right, so for you, do you see any teams that have surprised you so far, or any ones that have disappointed so far? It's really hard to pick from as we just ran through there. Records.
No, I mean, there's no surprises. Cincinnati was someone we talked about, never had them this high. I think you and I both had them at the end of the top 25 list preseason. So to be at 2, that is really well. A surprise for me would be Iowa State, just simply because I don't think it was a name we talked about. I can't remember when I was changing the ticker from the last time we did this, and Iowa State I don't think was a team that I deleted off of there to put somebody else on, so they clearly weren't there. So to be at 4 is huge. Trying to think, TCU I had on there, and in terms of disappointments, I don't know. I can't really be upset with Oklahoma State because they lost one game. Like, they're still right in it. They're just not ranked. Maybe I would say Notre Dame. I thought Notre Dame would be better. And I think a lot of that has to do with that now you're looking at injuries piling up. So they had Tyreek Hill, Saquon Barkley. Again, I don't know. I just thought, I mean, they still have 2 wins, but I just thought they would score more points with the massive roster that they have. Because I think that was one of the things when you and I did this last time. Kyler Murray was so huge for this team because the rest of it is so solid that he needed to do whatever he could to get Kyler Murray, and he would have been a contender for playoff spot. I think it was. I don't know what we had him as a contender for. I don't know if it was for like league champion or a top team or what it was. But now just kind of looking at it, I'm not sure that he's a super contender. Did you lose me?
Nope, I'm here.
Oh, all right. I thought you said there he is. I was like, sweet, I got lost again.
No, I think you're right. I was looking at his scoring. I mean, it's at 213 total, but looking at each week, he had his best week last week, and it was not even over 80 points yet. And so part of this is I think Kyler Murray is still finding his groove and hasn't played up to the level that some of these other really uber productive quarterbacks have been playing. Even like a Josh Allen, I think for the first couple of weeks has kind of outplayed Kyler Murray in terms of fantasy points. But then I think some of this output's been hit or miss. Leonard Fournette's not been necessarily this pronounced world beater. You mentioned Tyreek Hill going down in week 1. While it didn't hurt his outcome, it did put him behind the 8 ball. I am curious to see if he started Chark after week 1. Let's see. No, he didn't start Chark until week 3, so he missed out on some prime points the first 2 weeks. But he he started Corey Davis over Chark, which didn't cost him a win, but puts him behind the sticks. So he's one that I could probably put as a disappointment, just because I think everyone had such lofty expectations. But yeah, in terms of surprises, I'm probably going to put Baylor. Baylor's not one I really thought would be this contending team. They put up a ton of points the first 2 weeks, but I feel like some of it's been built out of like necessity. He doesn't have too many options in terms of players that he's playing week in and week out.
Which is so odd. It's so odd. Sorry, I'm just looking at this roster. You're 100% right. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine. Yeah, he's just been a surprise for me, especially since he held the top spot for 2 weeks in a row. It seemed kind of inevitable that there would have been a dud like he had last week. So it'll be interesting to see what happens coming out, but it's definitely a surprise as of right now. Probably another one that I'm surprised of is just how well Navy has been scoring. I didn't think Navy was going to be a bad team by any means, but they've been scoring a ton of points and beating good teams. I think he hasn't shied away from playing some of his rookies, which have probably been very helpful. But
yeah. No, I like Navy. I think I had him borderline top 25. Yeah. This is the one guy that voted me preseason top 25. So, he was. I don't think he's a spectacular team, but I think he's very, very solid. And then I don't know where I was just at. Oh, you commented on Baylor. I would like Baylor a lot more if just maybe strategy was used a little bit better. I'm just looking at some of these guys that are owned. Alex Collins, who's not even in the league. Rob Kelly, who's not – I don't even know if Rob Kelly's been in the league. Was he in the league last year? Very briefly or something?
He wasn't playing the entire season.
And then he's got Foreman, who's not in the league. I mean, I get that one. That one that probably makes the most sense out of the three of these. But then to also pair that with only rostering 16 – oh, no, not 16. Is that what we roster, or do we roster 20? 20, yeah. So you're 4 short, and then there's 3, so you're like 7 short, and that depth really could help. And I don't know why people don't do that, especially when he's got only $86 of his original 100 spent in the auction. Some of these people need to just throw the dollar out there. I mean, you never know what you're going to catch. And it's one of the things, I've been so excited. I've been texting you literally every week about DJ Shark, because when I got him, I was like, that stupid Indiana cut DJ Shark. I'm taking him. And I took him, and at the time, I think, I don't know what we were talking about, because I was trying to make another move, and you were like, oh, cut Shark, cut him. I was like, no, I'm keeping him because I think there's a chance. And a $1 that nobody else was interested in has turned into 50 points through 3 weeks. And it's just those type of things. You have to be able to – that chance is not going to hurt a team like this. And if you take 7 stabs at it, you're bound to get one, especially if you're going to take 7 stabs yearly. You're bound to get one sooner or later. And that would honestly, not saying that he'd have caught a DJ Shark this year, but had he grabbed something, anything of use, it helps him, but then also can help save some of these rookies. And not that he has a whole ton of them, but that's just my thoughts on this Baylor team. But you're right. Yeah, very good team, scoring a lot of points. I think Dak helps with that, because Dak's been out of this world. But yeah, no, you're right on the button there.
Yeah. All right. So we'll move to crystal ball projections. I did forward that email to you from Ross. Ross didn't share the result. He just typed up the results for me. So for the North, it has Navy with 5 more wins, Cincinnati getting 5 more wins, West Virginia 4 more wins, Iowa State 4, Notre Dame 4, Kansas 3, Army 3. South, TCU getting 5, Baylor getting 5, Oklahoma State getting 4, Texas getting 4, Kansas State getting 4, and Oklahoma getting 4, and Texas Tech getting 3. A lot of this seems to me that they're just going to beat the shit out of each other in these 2 conferences, which just seems to be par for the course. It's just a difference of 1, but the fact that no team has got 6 wins coming out of their conference play, speaks pretty big volumes to me, especially when you have a bunch of them getting 4 wins like Big 12 South. I think they're just going to beat up on each other. And some of that can play very interesting results in terms of the rankings. They could end up really hurting the chances of Big 12 getting at-large team in, because they will beat up on each other throughout the season, which will hurt their wins being accrued. Because if everyone's 7-5, at the end of 12 weeks, doesn't look as good at beating, 10-2 team coming out of a conference. So that's something to take. I think based on this, it would still have Cincinnati coming out of the North and TCU coming out of the South as the conference. But what about you? Who do you think is going to walk out into the conference game for these two?
Sheesh. I don't know. I'm gonna feel like old school here. My money's probably still on the teams that I picked. Like I still think Notre Dame puts it together and comes out of there, regardless of whatever the projections say. And I really, really like Oklahoma State. I think that's Jacob. I've played with him elsewhere. He seems to kind of know his stuff. His team was solid. I know from following along last year. I think he was very solid last year. He's kind of got his team built in a manner that over the course of a season, the wear and tear that you get, or the surprises that you get, his team's kind of built to withstand a lot of that, I think. He's got 3 options at quarterback. He's got 3 or 4 options at running back. The only issue is the wide receivers, I think. And he might have to – I don't know who he started or isn't starting, but he might have to play one of these rookies or 1 or 2 of them to pair with Godwin and Juju. But I think that team is built more for stability, like the long haul of a season. I mean, like you said earlier, we've got, 8 more weeks of this? So I think Oklahoma State – Notre Dame's probably stretching it, but I just would rather put my money on the teams that I thought were going to be there at the very beginning.
Yeah, I'm thinking for the North, I don't like Cincinnati's lack of wide receiver depth as much. So I feel like they might falter once we get into bye weeks. They might have a harder time fielding as competitive of a team, even though they have an abundance of quarterbacks on their roster. I think I like Iowa State or Navy coming out of there. Probably would lean more Navy for the North, just because they seem to have the running backs. They have Patrick Mahomes, which I feel is more consistent. They still even have Jacoby Brissett, who will maybe play Week 12, but he might have the thing all wrapped up by then. And I like his wide receivers better with Kupp, Metcalf, Ridley, Ingram, even Gallup when he comes back. I think it's just a better set. So I think I like one of those 2 teams, and I think TCU might be hurt with the
Barkley.
With the fact that they really did they have Barkley? No, they don't have Barkley.
Oh, I'm looking on the wrong.
Baylor's got Barkley. Yeah,
that's how I clicked on him.
We'll see what happens. They might be in trouble with the fact that they have not that much wide receiver depth. So Juju and Ingram are his 2 biggest proponents, but he has Zeke and McCaffrey, and this could just be enough to carry him through. But we'll see what happens. I'm probably going to put my money on TCU or Oklahoma State to walk out of the South again. So, yeah, I could see it breaking that way for those 4. Those are the ones I seem to like the most. All right. That puts us to the dumpster fire that is the Big Ten.
It really is.
Yeah, you guys are kind of all over the place. I feel like I have a ton of disappointments.
Well, I know that. Here's the deal. Like, going into this, I think I told you that my division was not very good. So I didn't have really any real expectations for anybody that's in that Big Ten East. The Big Ten West has done exactly what I thought it would. Purdue's there, Northwestern's there, Wisconsin's there. The surprise for me is that Nebraska's actually there and actually ranked, which I like. And this is kind of where I kind of am looking at, like, okay, really, number 23, I'm 2-1 as well. I have more points. I don't know what the all-play difference is, but it's one of those things where I was like – and then you click and look at Nebraska's team and roster, and I'm like, really? Like, this is ranked higher than me? And so –
it's all because of the win.
Yeah, right. But, I mean, you just look at that, and so Nebraska's not going to – I mean, no offense to him. He's great. I like that he talks in the chat, all that he brings. So we'll take that for what it's worth. I don't think he's going to be a ranked team moving forward. But those the top 3 in the Big Ten were Purdue, Northwestern, and Wisconsin. So it's utterly shocking to me that Northwestern's not ranked at 2-1 with 260 points scored. That's a little much.
Oh, they're 26, so they're not like they're
but still, they that type of team should be ranked higher than a Nebraska. But the rest of it, I don't know.
I don't see. I think he's gotten. Who's Nebraska played? They beat Duke and Texas Tech. They've scored a lot of points, but they haven't played anyone necessarily all that well. And I think they lost last week when they finally did put up some points. So they've been a surprise for sure, but I don't think I view them as the same type of zeal as some of this other stuff. The one team I am shocked about way more than others is I'm shocked about Rutgers. Rutgers put up a bunch of points as well, and I didn't think they would. And I've been shocked from a disappointment standpoint in Penn State. Penn State is not.
I thought you were going to say me. I'm shocked from a disappointment standpoint that you're on top of that standings column. That's where I thought that was going.
No, I'm more shocked that Penn State isn't the top of that standings column because I felt like they were going to just kind of run through it. But I think that Tyreek Hill injury has hurt them.
Yeah,
probably more so. And the fact that he's got Mitch Trubisky, who's just been laying duds all over the field for the most part, besides last week. So he could easily bounce back, but I'm a tad disappointed with how non-conference went for him.
So I wanted to spend some time on Rutgers because, again, you and I talk about this league way too much, and we've talked about Rutgers before. You were surprised that they're scoring points, or surprised? Well, I think that was what you said, or you were surprised that they aren't good, or I don't know. I missed. You were surprised about Rutgers or something.
Yeah, I'm surprised they scored so many points. I didn't think they were going to be a team that was really good. And looking at their roster, I could see it being unsustainable. But they were shocked to me just from the standpoint of how many points they were putting up and the fact that they were just playing better teams that beat them, just outscored them because they had Austin Eckler, who's been dynamite, Deshaun Watson, who's played really well. They have Terry McLaurin, which I don't think they played every week, but he's got a pretty good, stable group of wide receivers that he can play week in and week out.
Yeah, and so when we talked about this, we were talking about primarily Austin Eckler. Again, Melvin Gordon, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. So without Eckler, then you're looking at starting like a Montgomery and somebody else, or a wide receiver, because Kenyon Drake's not amounted to much, and your only other option, are these two rookies. So it's Montgomery and Tony Pollard, which is odd because I think we were talking about it. They've got a lot of points, and they seem to be pushing to try to win games, which might backfire because of the structure of this team, like you said. You brought up Terry McLaurin, who I don't think he started. I went back and kind of double checked. I don't think he started, but he is in a starting lineup for this week, for week 4.
He hasn't started them at all. So.
Yeah, so there's a red shirt getting burnt there. And like I said, at the running back situation, once Eckler kind of loses that spot to Gordon, you're going to burn potentially another red shirt or two at the running back position. And so it's just going to be – I think it's going to put itself in a position that's not going to yield dividends. Like I think it might – make him think he's close enough to push. It's just one of those weird things. The team is good. It's not great, but it has scored a lot of points.
Yeah, I feel like his wide receivers, if David Montgomery, who's already played every week, so he's avoided that red shirt. If he plays them, he could get a few wins throughout the conference play, especially playing in the East. I don't think it's far-fetched that he beats some of these other teams. Because I think his quarterback alone and some of his wide receivers could, at this point, maybe carry him to beat a team like Michigan State, who's got Marcus Mariota and some better running backs, but even he's hurting now because he's lost Barkley. So I think he could pick up a few wins and be kind of a spoiler for conference play this season, but we'll move into crystal ball projections. the West is the only team that surprised me is Northwestern. We've talked about them a little bit. Big Ten East, Ohio State's projected to get 5 more wins. Rutgers 5 more wins. Michigan 5 wins. Penn State 4 wins. Maryland 4. Michigan State 4, and Indiana 3. Big Ten West, Purdue getting 6. Northwestern getting 5 more. Nebraska getting 4. Wisconsin getting 4. Illinois getting 4. Iowa getting 3, and Minnesota getting 1. So that would put probably Ohio State and Purdue in the conference championships, which
yes, because
good luck to you, Lewis, in that.
Yeah, no, I won't make it in the conference championship. But I mean, that's just I was looking at. It probably is the most accurate for me, simply because I play Iowa this week, and right now it's sitting at a 25-point difference and change. So I probably get a win there, and I get a win against Michigan State because I play in Week 11, and he won't have a quarterback or a running back. So trying to think of who he has to start. He won't have a good week that week. So that's 2 wins fairly easily. If I don't beat Indiana, I don't even know, transfer out. I don't know how that's
you just don't hear from them anymore.
Yeah, so there's some things there, and I think when we talked earlier, I think Maryland was a team that when you ranked Maryland high at the beginning of the season, and I said, hey, what the heck? I'm on the same playing field as Maryland. I think I have them on a potentially good week in terms of bye week matchups, things like that. So I thought Maryland was one I could sneak away from. So now I'm starting to count wins because originally that's what I was talking to you about. Is I'm just trying to count bowl game wins. That's all I'm interested in. But now just counting those wins, like with how bad the rest of this conference is or this division, it might actually just be enough to let me win the division, which would be interesting. I still think I picked Penn State if we're on projections or predictions. I think I was the only one that voted Penn State in the chat. Indiana got more votes, and I think that puts more on how that conference works to try to irritate me. That when I say something about Indiana, then they all vote Indiana to win.
Yeah, they did.
even though Indiana's 1 and 2 and scored the least amount of points. Maryland scored less, but not a great couple of weeks for Indiana. My money's on Penn State, but I don't think, which is shocking to me. I can't figure out why Michigan's not good because of the quarterback situations they have. They have Lamar Jackson and Mahomes, so he should be at least scoring 30 points a week, 40 points a week. I don't know how that math doesn't add up there. So I don't know what Michigan's doing with those other position players. But the rest of these teams, Michigan State's not great. Rutgers is like borderline. Scoring points, but not like it's one of those receiving teams. You can fall for a trap there. But also a game that I project myself to lose to Rutgers there. But yeah, so I think Penn State's going to be able to come out of it just because I think Penn State's got better players than I do. My team's solid, and nothing against them, but for my team to be great, it more or less relies on me setting a lineup correctly. I have to make the right call every single week in and out to get the most out of my team. Some of these other guys have the luxury of, hey man, who should I start? Should I start cooking Kamara or should I start some other guy? My guy's playing, these other guys, and I'm just picking at you because it was it's one of those things where you had the option. I think your guys were Kamara, Cook, and who was your other option?
Oh yeah, for last week, yeah.
You're right. But whoever your third option was, those 3 players are. I probably have one guy that's better than those 3 options that you have. And so when you have that luxury, I think there's a little less emphasis on setting a lineup. But if I set my lineup right, then yeah, I could see myself getting 5 or 6 wins additionally to what I already have.
Yeah. So thanks for bringing up the poll. Indiana, I think almost out of spite for you, got 3 votes out of the 8 other teams that got vote, and it seems a little more kind of selfish voting. Maryland voted for himself, Michigan voted for himself, Northwestern voted for Michigan, Penn State you voted for, and Rutgers voted for you.
I thought that was you. Never mind. It's Rutgers.
That was Rutgers. I didn't vote in any polls. I just wanted to get the results. But Wisconsin put a 5 votes up for West, and then Purdue got the 3. So teams still view Wisconsin as one that's going to pull this out. I'm a little concerned about Wisconsin now, just because Tyreek is out for an extended period, and he lost some depth at his running back by this Eckler news, so he's going to have to make some decisions here, but he should still be okay. It's just a matter of, will he be better than Purdue? Because currently he hasn't had the team play like it. But I do think it's probably a two-team race out of them. I also view Penn State as probably the best one to come out of the East, for all the same reasons you talked about, especially if Tyreek Hill comes back in any sort of time frame where he's not giving him only 2 weeks of production, like giving him 4 or 5 weeks of production. He might still have a really good chance at it. But his running backs are just, I think, better suited. And if Mitch plays anything, and now that he's got Mason Rudolph to play for bye week, it probably helps him a lot more too, this situation. So we'll move on to Pac-12, unless you have anything else to say about Big Ten.
No, that was 100%. I voted, I think, for those teams. I don't know if I said Purdue was my pick out of the West. I can't remember. I know I said Penn State was my pick out of the East, but I think I voted in the poll for Purdue. You might have mentioned that, but just way solid for the same reasons. Wisconsin, I'm a little worried about, but Purdue's lineup seems to have gotten stronger. Kind of, we had them very, very high preseason without knowing some things, but how things have shaken out, I think they've gotten a little bit stronger, especially at the wide receiver position. And then kind of with tight end, I think Evan Ingram had a really, really good kind of like, I don't know how you would explain what the word I'm looking for. I guess chemistry is the word I'm looking for with Daniel Jones. So I think that's only going to get better. And then the DJ Shark again, at the wide receiver position, which is where I think we all thought he was going to be pretty weak. So now he's got some additional pass catchers stepping up. I think that Purdue team's going to be really, really good.
Yep. All right. Pac-12. Pac-12. Let's see here. I think very similar to Big Ten. Feels like to me they got some real dud teams. For the, literally some of the divisions, and then they have some middling teams. I think North seems a little bit weaker than South. Just like East seemed a little weaker than West for Big Ten. But surprises for me for Pac-12, I think Oregon State's a shocker, just because of them being 17th at the top of their division. And I also am kind of surprised at just how good Utah has been. They've put up just a bunch of points. So those are my surprises. Disappointments, I don't necessarily. I think Colorado might be my only disappointment, and Oregon. Colorado and Oregon are my disappointments. I just don't think they've produced as well as I thought they would. I think Colorado, the fact that Todd Gurley just is nowhere near the same, and his other two running backs that he's primarily playing are Fournette and Carrion, who have not looked great either. Have probably hurt him a lot. So, how about you?
I'll go a different way. My surprise is how bad Washington State has been. Like, I knew they were going to be bad, but they're like 25 points a game bad, or whatever that is, 29 points a game bad, which is just absurd. And looking at that, I was like, really? Someone's like, I thought this 88.62 was like a weekly average, and it's like 88.62 total, which is just really, really bad. I'm surprised that Arizona State is 0-3. I guess the quarterback situation there, but that was one of the teams that was in the transfer pool that I was seriously considering taking. And they have a lot of pieces, and even the rookies that they've grabbed seem to be, for the most part, pretty good grabs. So it's a solid team. It's just one of those things where it's like, man, because you're looking at Chubb, Zeke, the Tyreek Hill again kind of bit him. But he's got Sterling Shepard, MVS, there was somebody else, Terry McLaurin. So there's some good players there. So to sit at 0-3 kind of that's more of a bad luck one that kind of sucks. The season's probably done for him now, but it necessarily probably didn't need to be. But I'm also just USC. I'm intrigued that they're at 2-1 with only 177 points at 22 overall. So that's a surprise for me. Again, I don't think they stay there because they won't have a quarterback this week. He's on bye, and he's also been out. So I'm not I guess he's going to start week 5, but we'll see. So I just can't imagine them staying in the top 25.
That's a really good point. USC, I'm surprised, is 2-1 with not having a quarterback, and a quarterback who played really poorly the first week as well. Didn't put up a ton of points, and the fact that they're 2-1 is pretty amazing. So definitely agree with that. Crystal ball projections, and let's go to the voting. We'll do voting first this time, just so I remember it. 5 votes in the North. 4 of them all voted for Oregon. 1 vote for BYU, which was by BYU. So people still have viewing Oregon as the top team coming out of the North, and in the South, there were 4 votes total. 3 of them went to Utah, and 1 went to Arizona. So Utah, I think, is kind of winning over people in terms of just looking like the class of the conference. We'll see how long that lasts. For win totals for the North, Oregon State projected to get 5, Oregon 5, BYU 4, Cal 4, Washington 4, Stanford 4, and Washington State 0. Just such a bad look.
So if you play Washington State, there's a free win for you.
Essentially, yeah, they all pretty much get a free win out of that division, and whoever plays them in the conference overlap. Pac-12 South. Utah getting 6, Arizona getting 5, Air Force getting 5, Colorado getting 5, USC 4, UCLA 4, and Arizona State 2. I think Arizona State might be a little more of one that will be hopefully better than in conference play. The fact that Rosen is, I think, projected to get the rest of the start for the season. We'll hopefully see better games out of him where he can put up some touchdowns and maybe give him some opportunity to shock a few teams in the South and play spoiler a bit. But you're right, he's going to have a long way to go to get to being bowl eligible. So we'll see what happens, but he could play spoiler. But based on these projections, it looks like it would be Oregon State and Utah playing in the conference title.
I'm okay with that.
I probably would. Man, that's tough. That's so tough.
I picked both teams out of Oregon. I think my exact quote was, even after talking about the auction, I think I said something like, "I'm really impressed with what went on in the state of Oregon. I think they both did really well. Obviously, I think both of us had the Ducks over the Beavers." I keep talking about this, and I keep thinking of that Mike Leach. Was that posted in here, or was that posted somewhere else? Because I referenced it today. I don't think anybody understood it. But Mike Leach was asked about the mascots in the Pac-12, and he was talking about, that was the tree. So that was what I referenced from Mike Leach's thing. If you didn't see it, you need to watch it. It's absolutely great television. But they asked him to rank the conference based on mascots, and he just starts breaking down each mascot, and it's great television. And so, if we went off of him, I think he picked Washington State Cougars because you can't count a Cougar. But I don't know how this shakes out. I think Utah is probably the best team in the South, and I'm not really sure if it's close at this point. Arizona seems to be one that had the best shot, but with Barkley, I don't know.
It'll be tough for them. Yeah, absolutely.
Arizona just seems to be the one that would have the shot at it. The Barkley news is going to kill them. The rest of this, I think it's just going to be down to whoever in Oregon plays better, either Oregon State or Oregon. I think that's – it's a little early to say that it's wrapped up, but I just am looking at how things are going here. I think BYU's underperformed a little bit through first 3 weeks. They were somebody that I liked a little bit, maybe a little too much preseason, but the rest of this, it's a free win against Washington State. I know that. But yeah, so I'm going to go with either one of those teams in Oregon. So I mean, like I said, I don't have an issue if it's Oregon State or if it's Oregon, but I think they're going to be playing Utah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Some of these teams have so many rookies on their taxi squad. At some point, I would feel like you're going to figure out who you want to redshirt, and then you should burn if they're going to be productive for you to be on your squad and helping you. Like I could see. I feel like Oregon State could falter just from the standpoint that he's got so many of these wide receivers that he's getting points from are rookies or seems unsustainable at a level. Like John Ross is, I don't think, going to be producing in a couple of weeks.
No.
Mark Andrews could be hit or miss and came out like a bomb the first 2 weeks, and we'll see. He's not even all the way healthy. But I think I'd probably be comfortable saying Utah and Oregon still come out of it.
Yeah.
It just seems more logical.
Oregon State will have tougher decisions, so we'll put it that way. Oregon State's probably in a similar boat as I am, where the team is good. It'll probably be way better next year. But in the meantime, you're going to have to set the lineup right every week. And my only thing is looking at this is because you mentioned John Ross. He's got DK Metcalf on his bench or on his taxi squad. That might be one where he plays depending on – I'm going to pull up his schedule.
He could probably –
depending on who he plays or how things go, and pulling up the schedule, it doesn't look like it's going to be an easy couple of weeks for him here. Because I was going to say, if it's an easy couple of weeks and you can pick up 1 or 2 wins and put you in a spot where now you only have to win a couple more games, get a bowl game, then you consider burning Metcalf's red shirt. But Oregon State's going to play number 24 Air Force, followed by number 3 Utah. It's going to be a tough couple of weeks there.
Next 3 weeks will be tough.
And then he gets 2 easier ones and then a hard one. So he's going to have a little rough there. So, like I said, I don't care what Oregon team wins. It's going to be one of them. Probably now, after looking at the schedule, doing a little research, I'll switch and say it's probably the Ducks. But one of those teams in Oregon is going to win that division.
Yeah, probably. All right, moving on to the one everyone's been waiting for to hear, SEC. SEC had pretty up and down non-conference. Felt like just pulling up the polls, so I have those ready. Okay. Surprises for me, Missouri.
Yeah, I'm surprised they set a lineup, but go ahead.
Yep, they set up the lineup. Missouri's a surprise. Kentucky is a surprise.
Number 10. How is that even possible?
He's put up some points. It's been
but where are the points? That's what I'm like. Look at this roster and tell me where the points are. Like, click on Missouri, pull up this roster, and tell me where the points are coming from. Because I'm looking at this and it's like
Derrick Henry. It's Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey.
Right, I have those players. I have those guys, and I have Dak who scored more points than Wentz. So tell me. So you name 2 people, 3 people. I'm better than that.
You didn't start Derrick Henry 1 week. He started him.
Yeah, but he's still 3-0 in a top 10 team. It makes no sense because then you look outside. Look outside of this. His only other player is Juju Smith. That's it. Nothing else scored more than 10 points, and he's ranked top 10. He's going to fall out. He's not going to be in the top 50 by the end of the year. So you heard it here first. Move on. This is the part that this makes me mad. I mean, there's literally outside of Wentz, Henry, McCaffrey, and Juju. There's not a player on here that scored more than 10 points. Keyshawn Johnson has 11.
Sometimes that's all you need. He'll have trouble. He'll have trouble once bye week start. And
absolutely. I don't know who he plays, but someone needs to beat the crap out of him this week.
Another team. So disappointments for me. Vanderbilt. They were number 1 in the preseason poll, and they've just played some tough teams. They played Navy and just lost this week, and I think they lost to Hawaii earlier this season. And they beat Marshall, I think. I think those are the teams that they beat. So they haven't played as well. And I think Joey has his own opinions on it, and Joey's totally in his head, but he's definitely been a disappointment based on where he was ranked, if we even feel it was justified anymore.
Could you imagine if Joey kept the players that he cut during the auction, how much better his team would be? But anyways, go ahead, carry on.
Yeah. And then I think the other big disappointment for me, I'm not going to put LSU there because he just played a really tough schedule, but I am going to put Auburn and Arkansas in that group. They did not play very well. I think Auburn and Arkansas were both in the preseason top 25. And
yeah, I had Arkansas even higher preseason. I think I had them like top 10. I was high on Arkansas. I mean, probably because of the quarterback position there, and I think that might have been what we talked about was if you put it into was it Kevin that had built the that ranking system, that if you put them in, that Arkansas is a team the computer liked just because of the quarterbacks. Now he didn't have Melvin Gordon. He's going to get Melvin Gordon here, it seems, sooner than later. My only concern is kind of like, is it too late at this point? No, but the rest of the team looks solid.
Yeah, it's not too late for conference play. It's coming back. Like, he's got to probably, hopefully, I don't know who he plays this week, but he hopefully needs a
he's playing Missouri, so he's going to win. That's going to be the smackdown. So I don't know who Arkansas is. I don't know if you just talk in the chat. I don't know if you're in the chat. I don't know if you listen to this. But, well, if you don't, then I don't care. Never mind. I hope you lose.
No, he doesn't listen to this. But, yeah, he could easily be a contender for us for this league. Any other disappointments for you?
Arkansas was the big one for me, I think. And the fact that Missouri is winning games is disappointing. You mentioned Joey. I'll talk about Kentucky. I mean, 2-1. I don't think he belongs there, and I think he knows that. But 2-1, probably the least points scored in the SEC. I can't remember what his deal was. I'm trying to look. Where is it?
Yeah, he's got a terrible all play. It's like 26%. He's got an average score of 56 points per game. And I think he's beat Iowa and Fresno State. So not necessarily world beaters, but he's beat. But kudos to him. His team is bad. I think he even knows his team is bad. But
that goes to kind of hit on what we talked about with scheduling very early on, with if you kind of know you're not going to be great, which I don't know if he knew that or not. But because of how he's scheduled, that benefited him. Had he scheduled someone much harder, he'd be 0-3 and much farther down. Not that he's ranked or anything, but just those types of things. Because now he really only needs 4. I haven't looked at it. We'll talk about the crystal ball nonsense here in a little bit and see. No, it's not nonsense. I'm just kidding. It's just a lot of these numbers are very, very close. There's no disparity, which is kind of weird. But we'll look and see if he can get – it's going to be close. I just looked, so I won't spoil it. But it'll be close, so it puts him in a really, really, really good spot for a bowl game, which is honestly, if you're not one of those top, 10 teams from the very beginning of things, a bowl game is the best you can hope for.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, go over poll quickly. So 4 votes in the West. Alabama got a vote. Arkansas got 2 votes, and LSU got a vote. Alabama and LSU voted for themselves. So Arkansas seems to be one of the head favorites, and we already talked about how he could potentially be that. For the East, there were 5 votes, 2 for Georgia, 1 for South Carolina, and 2 for Vanderbilt. Joey did vote for himself. So I think there's going to be some interesting conference races, especially the way this breaks out for the projections on the crystal ball. Georgia's expected to get 5 wins. Missouri currently is expected to get 5 wins, but we've kind of talked about why they probably won't. South Carolina gets 4, Vanderbilt gets 4, Tennessee gets 4, Florida gets 4, Kentucky gets 3, SEC West, Alabama gets 5, LSU 4, Auburn 4, Mississippi State 4, Arkansas 4, Ole Miss and Texas A&M 3. So I think every way this is working out, everyone's going to bludgeon themselves to death in this conference play. So it's going to be very interesting to see who kind of falls out. And because you're bludgeoning yourself to death, another great illustrative point from what we were talking about with bowl games, chances of getting anything better than a bowl game lessen, and chances of even getting into a bowl game, especially if you had a poor non-conference, are limited. So it'll be interesting to see. Based on this, it'd be Alabama versus Georgia in the conference championship. So how about you, Lewis? Who would you pick?
Alabama definitely at this point, although Frank's team and Arkansas are both very good. I just don't know. I don't know. I'm just looking, trying to figure out. I like Alabama. I think I had them at the beginning of the season. I was going to comment, and I forgot who the team was. So I got to scroll back up. My page reset because I look on my phone instead of the computer. Georgia. I think Georgia, it was one that they're sitting there most points, 3-0. Again, you were talking about the bowl game. I think Georgia's one that might be able to kind of take that a step further and be the team that comes out of this with sights on a playoff spot, simply because they've got, like I said, haven't lost, most points, and they don't have Tyreek Hill yet. So that team's going to get better. And because I'm not in this division, when I click on the rookies, it doesn't tell me who he started. But he's got some options here at rookie positions to kind of fill out his thing. The only issue with Georgia is the depth at running back. Outside of Dalvin Cook, who's been phenomenal these first couple of weeks, which I'm not sure it's sustainable, but he has been phenomenal. There's really not that many other options. So I can't tell if he's blown a red shirt on David Montgomery yet, or again, there's a Terry McLaurin.
He's blown a red shirt on both Montgomery and Singletary. So
okay, so it's a team that's going to push, and I think rightfully so.
Yeah, I think they got a really good shot. I think I was worried about his wide receiver. I was worried about his running backs, but the fact that he's playing both of them seems to suggest he's going to, go all in, as you alluded to. It'll be interesting to see.
Why does he have Matt Bryant? Am I not?
Yeah, I just noticed that, so I had to load. I don't know how I missed that one, but it's fixed now.
How does he not know? Like, hey, dude, my copy is not scoring any points. Like, that might have been something that probably didn't even notice. Probably doesn't even care. Set the lineup back in July and let it ride. Good Lord. So, all right. Well, at least that's fixed now. So he has a copy that's going to score points.
Yeah. So that'll be fine. Especially since he's 3-0, we can't really bitch and moan about it. Tyreek, we'll see what happens with him. But if he comes back at any timetable that's worth it, he could be Georgia could be probably the one that walks out of that group. I keep wanting to root for my guy, South Carolina.
He actually has a chance. I pulled up. I can't remember what data I was pulling. I don't know if it was today or the other day, but his team came up on a couple of different things that I was running. I can't remember if it was me counting out projected wins like this crystal ball thing, or going off of kind of my own ranking system that, since I don't, not that I don't like the top 25 here, I just am trying to jump the gun and get to that top 25. I'm just trying to get to the top 25, like how you said, I'm not worried about top 25 week 3. I want it to be more accurate week 12. And so I was trying to play with to compile it to kind of get that week 12 data available now. This is essentially what I was trying to do. And I think South Carolina was one that kept coming up as a team that's supposed to be there. I don't know who he's starting, but it should be Brissett at quarterback. Trubisky's garbage. But But with the talent, he's got some depth. The wide receivers haven't really gone off yet. Galladay did terrible. And I think you played. Did you play against Galladay this past week?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that more or less was what saved you. Because I was trying to think of why your projections got so messed up at one point. It's because Galladay basically did nothing this week. So I don't think that's going to happen every week. Gallup's hurt. Hopefully, I don't know how long he was out. But hopefully he gets back sooner rather than later, and I think that will help him big time because that Dallas offense has been phenomenal.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with South Carolina coming out of the – I think I said it at the beginning of the year. I think I'm going to stick with them. I have no reason not to. I think they have pretty good depth. Even though I could see Joey finally his team waking up and doing stuff. In terms of the West, I think I'm going to put my cards with Frank.
Good luck with that.
I think he's just got better depth at quarterback, and I like his running backs better. Mainly just because he's got Kamara and McCaffrey. I think those two could probably carry him pretty far. His wide receivers, he's got Michael Thomas, and he's already shown he's willing to play his rookie, so he'll play Terry McLaurin and DK the entire rest of the way. So maybe not a lot of depth at wide receiver that I feel like I'd be comfortable with, but Frank's already shown he's willing to put all his chips in.
Yeah, if he's not playing Terry McLaurin yet, he needs to immediately and just ride that out. Again, I'm not sure that's one. I don't watch a whole lot of these games, more or less. Like, I'm more into the stats and the numbers of the NFL than I am the actual product that's on the field. And I watched that Redskins game the other night, and McLaurin's good. I don't know if he's great, but he's good. But it's a matter of what talent is around him. And when he's competing with guys like Trey Quinn and Paul Richardson, and some of those other guys that are just not that they don't belong in the NFL, but they're just not good. That means that you're going to have to force the ball. You have to get the ball to somebody. Someone's got to get force-fed, target-fed, and for this season, that's Terry McLaurin. Beyond this year, I don't know if that projects next year, because if you're talking, okay, the Redskins suck again, they've already got a quarterback they can't take, they've got a young running back, so then do they look at getting more weapons on offense, and then those weapons take away from McLaurin. So I think that's one that you need to consider burning this year if you haven't burnt already. Get it while it's going hot. That was my takeaway from watching that game. What was that, Monday night? No, I don't know. Yeah. Whenever it was. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like you need to play him now, especially if you're going to play him, because the second Keenum loses that job, I don't really know if you're going to be able to confidently play him with a rookie quarterback.
Yeah, but that was the other thing, and I'm glad you brought up Haskins, because that was my next. I had two parts to that, and I sometimes ramble and forget that I have multiple parts. That the connection with Dwayne Haskins and Terry McLaurin from Ohio State. I was kind of watching that game, and I was like, okay, you've got to get Keenum out of here because he was god awful. But at the same time, you don't want Haskins' first reps to come against the Chicago Bears D. They'd have murdered him. They play the Giants this week. I don't think they've announced that they'd start him. I think if they are losing big at any point in this, then I think that's where we'll see Haskins come in. And I think it actually might help him to have McLaurin there, because it's someone that he can count on. Like, he knows the routes, he knows body language, those type of things. So I think that you still might be all right playing McLaurin. You might not just get it. I don't know. You might not just get as lucky with the touchdowns as we've been for the first couple of weeks here, but I think target percentage will still be there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. All right, so that's the SEC. We'll move to our final conference for the night and wrap this up. National 16. Can't really make any inferences on them. I mean, they're all across the board, bigger conference, so it's hard to see if that conference is doing better compared to the other groups or not. But did have a bunch of teams ranked at the end of the non-conference play, so that's pretty encouraging. What was my agenda again? Any surprises or disappointments for you for the team so far?
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised you're number one. That drove me insane. So I sit there and refresh the shit out of the page on whatever night that was. I'm like, this can't be right. There's no way. Then I went and manually did the math to make sure that it added up with your spreadsheet, and it did. So it's not really a surprise when your team's good. I don't think it's number one good, and I think you know that. We'll see how that rides out. I think you've got an easy cupcake matchup this week, which I think is going to hurt you. But we've talked about that before. That you're playing somebody that you know, and that's fine. I'd
rather have an easy conference win.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. So I also didn't think that I think you thought you were going to come out 2-1 at best. So that 3-0 is massive for you. It's essentially a 4-0, which means you're 2 games away from a bowl game, and honestly, in a really, really, really good shot at coming out of there. You don't get a berth, right? Automatically, you get a chance. So you more so than any of the things we talked about so far tonight have to really take into account your scheduling and all of that. And I think you did the best. I mean, this is ultimately the best outcome you could have had. And you're right that you're going to get a free win there. It just doesn't help your whatever score that is. The only way it helps you is if you put up a shit ton of points this week to help your all play kind of go up. Because I'm looking, and I don't know. Maybe we'll talk about the crystal ball to see what UAB gets on the season, to see what you ultimately get out of him. But I'm not sure it's a lot, which is okay. He has a nice beard, but outside of that, the team's not that great. I'm trying to think of who else is on here that I liked or didn't like. Buffalo Bulls at 0-3. I'm just a little shocked because I swear John used to be one of the better teams. You would know more so than I, but when I played,
over the last few years have not been all that spectacular. Okay. When he was playing earlier in the NCFF, he had some of the best teams ever produced.
Right. Because I just remember getting steamrolled by him early on, and I was just like, good Lord. So that just personally surprising for me, I guess, because I remember him being like this juggernaut. I am surprised about Hawaii because that's not a team we talked about. And for them to be sitting here 3-0, not the most points scored, but a pretty 241's no joke. And then the 3-0 there, that's pretty nice. I'm a little disappointed in again, UAB for not getting a win. That really kind of let you down. Had UAB probably scheduled a Washington State or somebody to at least get a win there to help you out, that probably would have been beneficial. But
it's not just for me. I mean, he should have done it for himself.
I know. I'm just kidding. But the bigger surprise, I'm just ripping on Ricky while I can, because I did beat him in FCS, so I want to throw that out there. He's going to be my only win in FCS this season probably, and I beat him. And it was utmost, I think, the first one to 31, that one. So I beat him there. So not really good season on both fronts for him. Anyways, back on track here. Louisiana Lafayette. I think it was somebody that you and I both kind of liked. We're under 200 points here. We're 1-2. I'm not really sure. I guess outside of Tyreek Hill, I'm not really sure what else is going wrong with this team. I guess Joe Mixon really. Yeah, I don't know. 47 points over 3 weeks is what? Still 15, 16. It's not terrible, but it's still bad. It's
no, but if none of your other players put up points, and like the first week he lost, Joe Mixon put up 1.7 points, and Tyreek Hill put up 2.1. If you don't have a quarterback like Lamar Miller or Patrick Mahomes putting up 30 points, you're pretty much dead on arrival. It's just you need the quarterbacks to put up points for you, especially if you're going up against Mahomes.
I don't know if you need 30, but yeah, I would agree with that. But if you're going up with a team against Mahomes, you probably don't stand a chance anyways. But I'm okay with mid-20s out of my quarterback.
Yeah, that's great.
I would be okay with that. I don't think it needs to be 30 or 30 plus. I've gotten that out of Dak, which is a shock. But like, I think you said something about that with Kyler earlier, and Kyler was flirting at like 20, 21, 22. I would take that. I mean, that's better. I mean, Jared Goff hasn't put up that kind of numbers yet, so I probably more or less would rather have Kyler Murray than Jared Goff at this point. But yeah, no, it's just a little bit of an upsetting team, and I think at this point, it's what's even made it worse is that there's actually a good amount of players that are scoring points, and they're probably less talented than the ones that are week to week, like 20 points and then a 1-pointer. Because again, he's got a lot of these guys that we're talking about on and off. Tyreek Hill's been hurt. Galladay didn't have anything last week, but scored the week before. He's got DJ Shark, who's scored all 3 weeks, but is he really going to play him over Will Fuller and Galladay and DJ Moore, even though he's got 30 points more than a Fuller or some of these other guys? So I think that's kind of that gets in your head a little bit when your guys that are good aren't producing or aren't playing, and then the guys that aren't are, and then you start them. Like maybe you do that with John Ross in the first 2 weeks. He was on your bench because you didn't trust it, and then you're like, okay, now I've got to trust it. You play him week 3, and he's back to where he was. So I think that's a little bit of what's going on there with the Raging Cajuns, and so it's a little upsetting because I thought that they would be in a better spot. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else that I remember. I'm not worried about some of these 1 and 2, like 1 and 2 SMU. I'm not really worried about. I still think that they're gonna be pretty good. Has no business going 1 and 2, but I guess that's what happens when Todd Gurley doesn't get used in the red zone anymore. I think Kittle's underperformed, and I think that's also been the case for you, because I don't think you're going to talk about yourself, so I'll talk about you really quick, unless you plan on talking about how great the Houston Cougars were.
I will say I have surprised myself. You alluded that 2-1 I felt was my ceiling, and I still feel it was the ceiling for non-conference. But I got lucky, and I will gladly take the luck, especially since I haven't played Dalvin Cook at all yet this season. He's been like the best running back consistently. Just been getting some pretty good numbers out of Evan Ingram and some of my other running backs, along with Lamar, to carry me. Surprises for me, though, have been Northern Illinois and UCF, along with Hawaii. Those 3 I didn't think would be scoring as many points as they have. Disappointments. Coastal was a disappointment for me, and SMU to some degree, just because they wrecked this conference last year. So the fact that they're not looking so hot is not as hot as they were last year is just a little worrisome for me if I were them.
Still scoring a ton of points, and that's why I wasn't really worried. Whoops, I hit the wrong freaking button. I hate this shit. Looking at this, I mean, you're talking 81 points week 1 in a blowout win, which is fine. Week 2, lost by 3 or just under 3 points. And then week 3 lost by 5 points. So it's very, very close. And the week 3 was a TCU team that is pretty decent. We talked about them preseason. They're currently, I think, close to a top 10 team. I'm not really sure where they're at, but very, very close matchups. And again, I wish I could see who these people played. It's driving me insane that MFL doesn't have it on the same page here. But it's not somebody I'm worried about. They play Temple, Rice. That are probably going to be wins. Then they play U, which will be tough. New Mexico will be tough. But then it's kind of like a coastal, Buffalo, Marshall, Western Michigan. So, I mean, there's 1, 2. I don't know what the crystal ball says, but I'm going to go with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.5. So I'd give them 6.5 wins. on top of what he already has. So that puts him at 7.5.
Yeah, I'm more worried about his depth, to be honest. His team is pretty light in certain areas, like running back. It's Christian McCaffrey and Todd Gurley. When Christian McCaffrey goes on bye, I have legitimate concerns that team is going to be able, like, week 9 seems to be a straight loss for him. And also week 7 seems to probably be a pretty good chance he's going to lose. So we'll see what the other teams match up for him. But it's just the depth really more than anything scares me for this team because he doesn't have a lot behind it. He's got great players like Mahomes, CMC, Kittle, Gurley last year, and Kupp carried this guy to the playoffs. So that's my only real concern. And you touched on Louisiana Lafayette and where they stand. They're a bit of a disappointment for me as well. Let's go to the poll quick. Did not have a lot of votes in this group, so take it with a grain of salt. We did have 7 for Stripes, and 4 votes went to Boise State coming out of there, with one going to Northern Illinois, one going to Rice, and one going to Temple, which Temple voted for himself. So I think it was all positives. And then for the Stars division, 3 for me coming out of there, 1 for New Mexico, and 1 for Buffalo, which Buffalo voted for himself. So, and the crystal ball has Houston with 5, SMU with 5, New Mexico with 4, Fresno with 4, Western Michigan with 4, Coastal with 4, Marshall with 4, and Buffalo with 3. Stripes has Hawaii with 5, Northern Illinois with 5, UCF with 5, Boise with 5, Rice with 4, Louisiana Lafayette with 4, Temple with 2, and UAB with 2. So kind of no stratification really. A lot of teams in the middle, so we'll probably beat up on each other pretty good. I think it'll really probably come down to bye weeks and the level of depth teams have. That's really going to decide this conference this year more than anything. So who do you think is going to walk out of this?
I have no idea. I think I disconnected there for a second. I don't know what I did. Hitting this stupid button. So I also put up, I think I also had the screen up that doesn't have sound attached to it. So there might be a chunk that we lost in whatever you were just talking about.
Still there.
But what is? What's still there? Can you hear me? No. All right. So can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right. I wonder if they can hear me. They should be able to. I hit a button and it messed a whole bunch of things up on my end. I dropped my phone. So it should be all right. I think there just might be a little section where I flipped over to a different screen and they might not have heard a chunk of what you said, but everything else should be all right. So I have no idea what we were talking about because I was trying to frantically fix this while we were staying live here. I have no surprises. I think I already talked about that. In terms of picking, I missed if you did crystal balls, but I'm going to say you're definitely going to win. I don't think that there's really much debate at this point either. I mean, SMU still kind of might be a scary team just because they've still scored a lot of points. So if they steal one, I don't know if you heard because when I hit the button, I was talking about SMU and me projecting them out. I think I said 6.5 wins or something like that. Additionally, that was me being safe about it. That's not like with an upset in there. So I mean, they could upset some people, and if they do go from that 6 to 6.5 to like 8, then you're talking about 9, maybe 10 wins, which would that's too many. However that works out, 9 wins I think. Which would be really good for them. But I just don't think that anybody's going to – you might run the table here. So we'll see how that goes. But I wouldn't burn any red shirts in the process. I don't think you need to.
I'll have to make some decisions. I got too many players to not burn a red shirt if they're producing. So if that time comes, I'll have to make a decision.
I don't think so.
The one team that does give me pause is going to be Coastal. just because they could put it together. The team could put it together at some point. He's got players on there. He's got Juju. He's got David Johnson, Leonard Fournette, Dak, who's played really, really well. And he even has Terry McLaurin on his taxi, so he could bring him up at some point and play him. So he could give me some heartburn. I forget when I play him, but he could be a guy who plays spoiler this year, I feel like. Play week 9. I think I'm missing a few players week 9. So that'll be big.
I'm trying to pull somebody else. What's this other division called? I'm trying to find somebody else. I really don't know who I'm going to like. There's a lot of solid teams down here, but there's no one that I see standing out for me down whatever this is called, the Stripes division. Maybe Boise State. I'll click on them and see what they've got. No. Sheesh. I don't like Boise State either. So I don't know. I clicked on Boise State. I clicked on who else did I click on? UCF, Northern Illinois. Maybe I'll click on Hawaii and like what I see better.
That's why I kind of liked. I don't know. It's really hard.
Yeah, I don't know. This is like middle of the pack stuff. I don't think it matters who wins down here. I think it's very similar to what division am I? Big Ten, the East, where it doesn't really matter what happens in that division because they're going to get steamrolled by whoever comes out. We were talking about like a Wisconsin or a Purdue or whatever. And I think that's what's going to happen here. I don't think it really matters who comes out of Stripes because they're going to get steamrolled. My thoughts are either it's U or SMU. So one of those teams is going to steamroll whoever wins Stripes. So it doesn't really matter. I can't pick one. There's too many. They're built too similarly, and there's too many holes in each team for me to put my money on either one of them.
I guess if I'm going to put one, it's either I voted for Rice. I think I'll still stick with that, but it could easily be Louisiana Lafayette that comes out of there for I think the 3rd straight year they've come out of Stripes. So
then I go with them.
Yeah.
Let me see. Rice. Yeah, I don't even know if I like Rice. Then I'm going to stick with Louisiana Lafayette then because I commented on them earlier and I said that was my disappointment, and I guess that they don't need to be as worried as I thought then. Not that these and it's no offense, I don't want Boise State to be like, well, I'm ranked number 5 or whatever he is, no offense, I don't. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to say your team sucks or anything. It's just when I'm looking through championship caliber teams, it looks
maybe 2 tight ends every week.
Yeah, it looks more like a Louisiana Lafayette. So maybe we'll see if Tyreek Hill can come back. He's supposed to practice. I'm not sure when. But he's supposed to practice, I think, for a week before he plays. So I don't think he's practiced yet, which means he's not going to play this week and probably not next week. But if he gets him back, I like that lineup. That looks more like a lineup that should come out of a division. So I guess Louisiana Lafayette, but with the start so far, I'm not really sure I'd put money on them. But that'll be my pick. I'll go with them too.
So that kind of puts all the conferences into perspective. I guess the next time we're going to do this is probably either week 12 or week 13. One of the two is what I would think we would do. If it's week 12, we'll go over some of the clinching scenarios. If it's week 13, we'll preview the conference titles and at-large bids and go through the scenarios and things like that. But anything else you want to talk about?
No, I don't have anything else. I don't know. We'll see. I might do an emergency one if I have a legit shot at clinching the Big Ten East. I'm sure the people want to hear that. So might do that. The only other thing that I'd have to say is that I hope everybody else is enjoying the process. And again, I didn't see too many people. I mean, I think I picked at Boise State a little bit because and I also think that he didn't refresh his page or whatever the easy, quick fix was for that. Like, at the end of the day, it's a game. It's for fun. So if you don't like that the system puts you ranked 16 and you think you should be 5, like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, it's not like it doesn't matter today where you're at or what direction your team's going. So don't fuss over some of this stuff because it does take. Brian's got it down to where it updates almost automatically, I think, through the thing. But to build all that stuff was a lot of work, and it shouldn't be like discredited because it's not what you think it should be or anything like that. Like, that's the current system. It hasn't changed in years, or at all, I think. So I don't know. I would just take it for what it is and have fun with it, because ultimately a lot of the stuff that goes on here you're not going to get in any other fantasy league.
Yeah, I mean, just one thing to just keep in mind with all this is, one, it's a big league. It's not like we're playing a 12-teamer where you can make harder cases for this. We're evaluating 86 teams with a lot of the similar copies in similar team formats. So there's going to be crazy thin margin of error. The other big thing, like I talked about earlier, was we are trying to be objective as possible. We're not trying to put our own feelings into this because we want to remove any set of doubt. We can point to very specific data points that this is looking at, and we try to keep it simplistic too. We try to be robust enough where we're getting the results that we want, but we also want it to be simple enough where people can understand why those outcomes are that way. We don't want some really high-end formula like what the BCS had back in the day, where it was calculating all these different things and it took you to sit down and like figure it out. We've got just a very simple calculation that most of the time is going to put the right teams in the right spots. There can be some, situations where a team that you beat is ahead of you, and that's just how the math works, and that's the way we just have to live with it. You can make suggestions. We're always open for suggestions on improving the formula, but we also want to keep it in the thought of level of time it takes to calculate it, even though I don't do it manually. Level of time it takes to calculate, and how easy is it for people to understand it. If it's some really drawn-out process, people aren't going to believe the results anyway. So just some important contextual things to think about as we progress through this. Wow, I just noticed a really big game this week. Maybe that's something I want to quickly talk about, some games that I think are going to be big for week 4.
Because we're not in a time crunch or haven't been on here for so long already. But go ahead, let's point out big games. Let's run through them. You want to run through them all? There's 42 of them, 43 of them. You sure? We'll start Iowa, Ohio State. Who you got?
Navy versus Texas this week looks good. There's also Iowa State versus Baylor. There is also I saw it earlier. Where is it? Michigan versus Wisconsin, Notre Dame versus TCU, Arizona versus Oregon, Florida State versus Georgia Tech. Those are the big ones that I saw this week. So should be fun. This week should be a lot of fun.
South Carolina, Texas A&M will be good. Texas A&M only has one win, I think, but it's a fairly solid team. I think it's Josh Allen, James Conner, Nick Chubb, Sterling Shepard, Juju, and then MVS versus a South Carolina squad that you love. Oklahoma and Army is a good one. I'm cheering for Oklahoma because that's a team I've beaten.
And we forgot Vanderbilt versus Louisiana State or LSU will be the biggest game of all.
I'm trying to think of who else is big based off what we start. Air Force is ranked, playing against that Oregon State Beavers team. That's a good one. Florida State, Georgia Tech. I don't know if you said them. That'll be good. Penn State, Northwestern will be good. That's one I'm watching specifically for myself because Northwestern should be ranked. They've been pretty good. They've had some production. I would love for them to get a win over Penn State. That helps me even more. I'm trying to think who else here is good.
That's pretty good for me.
I guess I have to cheer for Big Red this week as well, looking at some of these matchups.
Oklahoma State versus West Virginia will be good too.
Yeah, Oklahoma versus West Virginia. So those are some really good ones. And then I just wanted to touch on one other team, and I forgot the name of it. I think it was the Washington State Cougars. Projected a whopping 24 something rather. I don't even know where it is, but it can't get any better than that. Why
shit on him? He knows his team is bad.
I know. I'm just teasing. That's the other thing. So I wanted to. I'm glad you used that exactly. Shitting on him. If anybody don't get offended by anything I say, or don't be upset, or don't, because I'll just say things. Some of it is accurate. Some of it I'll say just to rile people up, like specifically anything targeted at Indiana and some of these other people in here. So if you have any issues with anything, or don't agree with anything, or agree with anything, share your thoughts. I mean, I know it's just Brian and I doing this, these last couple times. There might be plans to throw someone else in here, maybe get Ross on one week or something like that. But it's a lot better to do these things and then to get some feedback, or to get some like discussion out of it, or I don't know. But that's the thing. So like, if something upsets you, if I say that your team sucks and you're ranked 86th over, you should be ranked 86th overall, and you don't agree with that, then tell me why. I mean, I don't know where you could put it, because I'm not in a lot of these conference chats or the general chat. If you want to put it in the ticker, that's fine. Same thing for when Brian posts stuff, polls this week that we just wanted to kind of use here. It does us no good if only 3 people vote and they all 3 vote for Indiana, which I get why that happened. But if there's something else that, hey, you maybe want discussed, or something about your team, or something about whatever, throw it in that ticker chat when you know that we're going to do one of these things, so we can talk about it. And so that would be something. When you had asked if I had any other thoughts, that was something I wanted to mention, and I forgot. So don't take this as anything that Brian says, because I know that he takes some of these topics where he says you might not like that Brian doesn't like your team, or the numbers don't like your team, or whatever. Share that. Let us know, and then we can kind of go from there. Or if you like more of certain things, like if you like the numbers that Brian throws out, or some in-game shit that I throw, or whatever it is. I mean, if there's some feedback that you want to give, then share it in that ticker, or share it with me and Brian or something, and we can kind of do it from there. Because this is most likely, I mean, it's more or less me and Brian getting on here and putting together a list of topics to cover, and then we talk until I get yelled at by the fiance for being out here for 2 hours. And then, if we get some direct feedback from you guys, we can kind of tailor that more to what you're looking for out of this. Because at the end of the day, it's your league apart, and you're a part of that. And even though we can't get all 86 people on here, as many of them that want to share a voice or share a thought, they should be able to have the ability to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So hopefully everyone enjoys this. It's a great update. Hopefully everyone's enjoying the league, as we talked about before. And that's all I have. So we can close up.
Absolutely. All right. Until next time.
Lewis.
Yep.